Santa with me. You were a tiny little picture on my screen there, Santa. All right. Well, that's quite the. Is that your workshop behind you?
This is my Tucson-based workshop. I'm actually here in Tucson just to be closer to you for this event. I couldn't make it over to Roy Place today, so this is the small workshop. No big deal. It's okay. The bigger workshop, we'll get back to that here pretty soon right before Christmas.
Well, I appreciate. It is cold here too. I guess you probably needed a sweater here as well, right?
Well, yeah, a sweater, but not the full-blown suit. It's not that cold here. We're still in the desert.
I gotta say, Santa, you're looking pretty lean and fit these days. You must be working out.
Well, I realized a couple of years ago that carbs are the enemy. So if you're planning on leaving me cookies and milk, I probably won't eat those. But if you'd like to leave me cauliflower and steak, I'll take that all day.
Oh, all right. I hope all of our attendees and listeners are paying attention. There's direct from the man as to what he'd like to find when he comes to visit your house. So Santa, this has not been an easy year. Supply chain issues, ships sitting off the coast, cost of fuel and inflation and everything else going on. Tell me a little bit about how'd you overcome all these supply chain issues to, this is like the most important deadline of the year.
Well, Brian, I wish I could tell you it was all magic, but it's only a small part of it is magic. You see, as an entrepreneur,
I'm zooming in.
I think we got somebody, there we go. As an entrepreneur, I'm dealing with a lot of the same problems that many of the entrepreneurs in Southern Arizona are dealing with, especially considering that my job is to produce products and then transport them all around the world. So for me, it's been the last couple of years. I'm surprised everybody got their presents last year. But what many people may not know is that though we do all of the R&D at the workshop, we actually use a network of manufacturers across the world to produce the toys that we eventually bring to the kids. For those of you that are parents, please don't tell your kids that little secret. But because of that, and because of the pandemic and some of the supply chain issues that we've seen around the world, it's been difficult to get all of the toys off of the ships and onto my sleigh so I can deliver those around the world. For example, things that might be happening across the pond in a country like China and some of the situations that they're dealing with as it relates to their policies around the pandemic greatly affect how our manufacturing operations in that part of the world can stay open or produce. And then if we can get things produced, it's been quite difficult to get things onto a ship and to get that ship across the ocean. Believe it or not, Santa Claus actually still pays for these things, just like every other entrepreneur. I know. If you'd like to donate to our cause or our clause, please, I'll put a link to that. But a shipping container, for example, which would have cost maybe $4,000 to ship a whole unit from across the sea for us, full of toys, may have been $4,000 in 2019. That same shipping container is now $20,000. So we're dealing with quite a bit of supply chain issues, but we're working hard to get through them.
Well, I definitely want to dig into that one, Santa. But I also am curious to know a little bit about the labor side of this, because you've got a workforce. How do you keep your employees motivated, and especially the non-human ones?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question, because we do have a mix of human employees, little spies, I suppose, scattered around the world helping us do what we do. But as many people know, it's really the elves that make up our executive team and our labor force. And for me, it was a few thousand years ago when I first hired our executive team of elves. But in order to keep them on board and interested when we really didn't have too many resources to pay them, we actually provided some equity in the Santa Claus company. This way they could have some skin in the game, and our whole success as an organization could be the success of each individual elf. These days, it is really difficult. And there's one phrase that I can convey to anybody that's watching our session here today. It's that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So our job is to ensure that the elves are motivated, that they feel that they are part of the organization, that they have some stake in the success of what we do. And that's not as easy as it would seem. It's not just about paying your elves a good salary, because oftentimes, as many of the entrepreneurs who might be on the call know, we really can't exactly pay them a competitive salary up front. And so for us, it's about that culture. And so how can we bring the elves together to ensure that that they realize that the success of the organization is their individual success as well?
It sounds like you're the oldest startup in the world.
We like to claim that. We're the oldest continuously running startup in the world at the very least. And so, yes, we've kind of been through all of it. When we first started our company, we didn't have a website, and so that was a thing when the '90s came around, and we realized that we had to maybe publicize our product to the world here, above and beyond what everybody already knew. Websites, that was a big thing for us as well.
Wow. I mean, 20th century Santa. I had no idea.
My beard was a bit shorter back then.
I bet. Yeah. And probably less white.
That's true.
I mentioned non-human ones. I'm also wondering, I mean, have the reindeer unionized, or are they still working for you on contract?
Hello?
I have been advised by my legal counsel to not discuss too much about the potential unionization
Tom, no.
of our reindeer workforce. But needless to say, that is something that is that we're seeing across the world recently. If you've looked at some of Starbucks and Amazon and some of those operations there, and the ability for employees to unionize, of course, we certainly support that. However, big deal for large organizations such as ours. And what we'd like to hope is that we are working with our employees to provide them with everything that they need above that. But should they choose to unionize, I think that is certainly their right, and something that we would work to try to support.
Sure. Yeah, I understand. I mean, I think at this point, just being able to have high performing employees who are willing to kind of roll with the punches and live in the startup world that you're in, those are few and far between, huh?
Well, I'll tell you what, we've had to look beyond the traditional ways of educating our workforce into more creative ways. And I know, Brian, with Forge, that this is something you're heavily involved in. I think particularly it starts with providing the opportunity to the elves when they're high school age or even middle school age, to ensure that they understand what opportunities are in front of them. And one thing, we are huge supporters of the university system. And for example, at the University of Arizona, there's some really great degrees for elves if they're looking to get into our industry. But to supplement that, there are also, really wonderful programs that are, fit within things like community colleges around the nation that are providing very specific workforce development programs for elves as they prepare to enter our industry. So you may not, you should strive for a degree, but you don't have to. There are workforce programs in toy making, in sled adjustment and fixing, you name it. And so there's a combination of support out there on the nation between the network of universities and community colleges and even those below that are helping to prepare our workforce.
That's amazing. I can see why you're here in Tucson then, because I mean, between Pima Community College and JTED, those are some phenomenal examples of where you can engage the students really early on, well before the university. Great thinking.
Absolutely. JTED is one of those programs, for example, that helps to prepare those elves even before they might get to a college setting. They have some pretty incredible, live action experiences for students, so that they're not just learning about how to build this toy, they're actually in that environment, they're building it, they're working through it, they're understanding what our customers, AKA the kids all around the nation, are looking for. And those things lend themselves well into those types of community college programs or universities where they can continue to work on those skill sets or obtain a broader degree. We certainly love to hire those elves that have shown that they take advantage of programming like that. And yes, here in Tucson and Southern Arizona, it is the best, which is why set up my mobile workshop here in Tucson, and I'm very much looking forward to continuing to hire my workforce right here out of Southern Arizona.
Outstanding. So you brought up the C word, customers. I gotta ask you, you have had to scale very quickly. Did you, seek outside capital, or have you been bootstrapping this whole time?
Well, Brian, I spent all of my time up until now bootstrapping this Santa Claus business, and that's not an easy feat. I actually had to put a line of credit on the North Pole, so that we could obtain some of the financing that happened in 2007. We won't talk about that, but now with some of the things that we're experiencing around the world, our need to scale our operations significantly, we've actually been preparing to receive outside capital, and are more than willing to put a good valuation on our operation and bring in investors that might want to take a chunk of the North Pole.
Wow. Nice timing on that. 2007, 2008. That must have been a little bit tough, huh?
That was a little rough. The homes that we were landing on weren't always filled, and so that became a thing. Sometimes the operation didn't necessarily have all the data on who was still obtaining or keeping their home, et cetera. Yeah, it was a thing for us, and so certainly we had to obtain some additional capital to make it all happen.
So, this reminds me a lot about the conversations we often have with our entrepreneurs about, how are you doing that customer discovery? Or have you built out your, a sustainable business model? I mean, Santa, I gotta be honest with you. I just don't see a sustainable business model here. How do you make any money? How do you and how do you keep this going?
Oh, that's a really great question. So I'm going to focus on customer discovery because for us, that is absolutely essential.
This is right here. Look,
If it weren't for our ability to go out there and talk to our potential customers to identify what it is that they're looking for, we'd still be trying to provide all the kids around the world with little wooden horses. And what we have found through that process, our customer discovery process, is that kids are more into Pokemon and dinosaurs than they are in little wooden horses. And that is something that has changed. So if there's any advice I can give the other entrepreneurs out there as it relates to customer discovery, it's that it's a never ending process. When we first started, we went out there and we spoke to the kids out there and we asked them the right questions and we understood what to make for them and to provide them so that they were happy. But that was quite a while ago. And so for us, customer discovery, just as it is for any entrepreneur, is a continuing process. And so we continue to go out there and talk to the kids and the parents, our customers, to identify what it is that they're really looking for, to figure out how we can provide them with exactly what they need. And that's exactly what the customer discovery process is all about. The one thing, Brian, that was really difficult for me is I'm Santa Claus. I'm all over the world, and my job is to sell Christmas. And it's really hard for me not to sell. And so when I go into these customer discovery conversations, I have to remember that it's not about, hey, you should really, really want this little wooden horse because it's the best little wooden horse, because I have a workforce that is well educated and well trained on making these horses, and you should want this horse. Rather than that, the conversations when we go out there and we talk to our customers, our kids, is less about, hey, do you want this little wooden horse? And you know that it's the best, and more about, hey, what is it that you want? What gaps can we fill for you? And that's what our business provides for the kids once a year.
Wow. So if you, being the timeless Father Christmas that you are, let's look to the future. What's in the future, Santa? Where are we headed? What's the market look like?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's one thing that we're actually currently putting together for our pitch deck for all those investors out there. Because one thing that investors would like to see out of us is that we are serving a market that has not just a very large initial dollar amount, but high growth potential. And so for us, it's looking towards the future of toys and, let's say winter happiness in general, and trying to determine how we can suit those needs. So the next couple of years for the Santa Claus operation are going to be quite interesting for us, very different. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to go out for some funding. Another reason why we're here in Southern Arizona is that right here in Tucson, we have, did you know, the fourth most active angel group in the nation.
Angel?
That's
Like,
right. Not the kind of angels that you normally see.
okay.
Yes, but thank you for clarifying. The fourth most active angel group in the nation. And for those that don't know what the angels are, that is groups of individual investors around the nation that provide seed stage funding to operations like ours. Now, you might think, oh, Santa, you've been around for quite a while. Do you really consider yourself seed stage? Maybe not. But the fact of the matter is we have not taken any additional investment or outside capital into the operation so far. And so our first go ahead at getting that outside capital in, we're going to one of the best angel groups in town, which is another reason why we're here in Tucson. So the Desert Angels. Brian, I heard you have some kind of involvement with that group.
Yeah.
It's another reason why I agreed to do this talk today, because I figured as a board member of the Desert Angels, maybe you can kind of push me through the system and help get some capital into our operation here. Just saying.
Well, I mean, it is important. And so, Santa, if you're fundraising, I can help set you up with the screening panel. We would love to hear you pitch.
Brian, I'm going to come back and ask you a question. Can you talk about what that screening panel is? What does that look like for entrepreneurs like me that are trying to go get some outside capital to scale our companies?
Well, I mean, I wish I could say that it was just a big giant chest full of money and all you do is walk up and grab some, but it's a little bit harder than that. You need to have your business really well defined as far as you have some customers that are, repeating in sales. You need to have a really solid team in place that can cover the entire breadth of what your business does. I mean, I got to admit, Santa, your business is a little bit scary to me because it feels like you're sort of a solopreneur, Now, maybe you've been developing all of your elves as a highly skilled executive team. And so if, I don't know, your sleigh gets knocked out of the air, the elves can take over the business, but you're pretty recognizable guy. And a lot of the investors, we would be a little worried about the risk to the business of having that one dynamic person in charge. But I'm sure you got it covered, Santa, right?
There's a couple things that I'll say, and I certainly appreciate the comment. The first thing you don't have to worry about with having one individual in charge of the operation, such as me, is that I seem to be able to live forever. So at the very least, you don't have to worry about the CEO going down. The other reason why I don't worry too much about that, again, we're going back to workforce here, is because our elves have taken advantage of programs like JTED and PIMA and the University of Arizona, and they're really, really good at keeping my sleigh running in the sky, not falling out of the air. But Brian, the one thing that I have done that has really helped me as we approach investors and as we approach other strategic partners for our operation is that I have built an incredible board of advisors, and I have a really incredible support network around me. And so though we might have one CEO here and an incredible executive team, we certainly realize that there are still gaps in what we're doing. And so we have begun to fill those gaps with the knowledge of advisors that are putting time and effort into our operation, that are more than willing to be on our slide decks, for example, our pitch decks, as we come to groups like the Desert Angels, to show that though we may not be able right now with the way that the financial situation is around the world for our distribution, to hire individuals to supplement what I do, we took a strategy of bringing on really incredible advisors that can really help to guide the company and show investors that we have the full cadre of knowledge. And so, for example, some of my investors include, the Tooth Fairy, Mother Earth. We got Father Time in there. And so a lot of them have been providing me with guidance. I mean, you asked me about how do we get toys, around the world, right? It's the question we get all the time. I have a great advisor for that in the Tooth Fairy, because man, that Tooth Fairy, they go all around the world. Dropping dollars for teeth. Yes,
that's right.
Yeah. Also, a potential investor for me, mind you.
I was going to say, I mean, I would think that would be one of your earliest investors right there.
Yes, the only problem is that that the Tooth Fairy provides funding one quarter at a
Oh,
time, and so fundraising, 50 or 75 cents here and there every minute is kind of difficult. But needless to say, an incredible advisor for us.
wow. You had mentioned that you're currently in Tucson. We actually just got a note from one of your correspondents at the North Pole in the data science department who has a question. I'm going to see if the North Pole data science department is there and able to ask.
yes, thank you, Santa. I am actually part of your team. I left my previous job in October, and I now work with Naughty Nice data to calculate optimal routes based on, what the results are this year from our colleagues on the shelf. You are seeing actually a picture of our workshop. I've had to hide faces and bodies to protect some of your intellectual properties. That's why you're not seeing us. And since my arrival, I've had some questions around the Naughty Nice list. So we grow up and we assume that this Naughty Nice data is binary. You're either naughty or you're nice, but I'm starting to think that maybe it's a spectrum. What sort of criteria do you use for determining who is naughty and who is nice? And is it possible to transcend being naughty if you do fall below the bar?
I'm very interested in the answer to this question, Santa.
Yes. It's really interesting because if you ask me a question like that, the first thing I'm going to tell you is that I rely heavily on my team. And so as Santa, it's not my job to know how to do absolutely everything, right? And so I rely on folks like you in the North Pole Data Science Department to help me to gather that data so I understand which kids are naughty and nice. The very first thing is the law. So if we're breaking the law, if we're stealing things, if we're doing some of the other terrible things that folks are sometimes caught doing, then yeah, you probably make it to the naughty list. But here's what I will say that we believe in second chances, third chances, sometimes even fourth chances here at the North Pole. And so certainly it is possible to transcend from the naughty list to the nice list. And provided the naughty activities were not exactly over the top, certainly something. The other thing is we're all about customer conversion. And so as we get more of our customers out there transcending from the naughty to the nice list, that means that we have the potential for more customers.
Thank you, Santa. I have a follow-up question if you're up for it.
By all means, please.
Okay, so the song says he's making a list and checking it twice. Are you doing all of that work yourself, or are you outsourcing any of that?
Oh, that is an absolute wonderful question. I have a couple of responses to this. The first of which is you emphasized he, and my apologies, my Zoom background is kind of skirting in and out there. I think it's because I got one of my elves in here. So needless to say, you mentioned he, and while I represent a male entrepreneur in the world, one thing that's truly important for us out there is ensuring that we support a diverse group of entrepreneurs. And so, yes, he's making a list and checking it twice. And yes, I am very much a male here. But did you know, for example, employee in the North Pole Data Science Department, that 1.5% is the last statistic that I saw of VC funding goes to women-led companies. And that for those that are in incubators, we have one of those in Tucson, I've heard as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, 6.5% of their mix of entrepreneurs are actually supporting women-led companies. And so, for us, it's really important to inspire entrepreneurs of all backgrounds, regardless of their age, of their gender, of their ethnicity, to grow these companies, because some of the data that you have provided for us has shown that when you have more diverse teams and you have more diverse leaders, that you make better decisions more often. And so one thing that I'm trying to do is inspire entrepreneurs of all backgrounds all around the world to do the things such as the things that we're doing. I'm not completely sure that I answered your initial question, but you got me on a tangent there, and so my sincere apologies.
Well, certainly, Santa, we appreciate your work. And, you know, the data sciences department here at the North Pole has been really good to me since my arrival. And I can say that there is very good inclusion on the team here, which is probably why the data is so reliable year on year.
Absolutely. That is certainly part of what we're striving for. Again, the more diverse backgrounds that we have on the team, the better the output for us. So we certainly appreciate everybody at the North Pole Data Science Department, the work that you're doing and the experience that you are providing to the rest of the team.
Fantastic. Thank you, Santa. Got to get back to work. The big day is coming up.
Yes, I was going to say that myself, but again, I trust my people, so I appreciate you mentioning it first.
Thank you, Santa. Goodbye.
All right. Well, Santa, I know you're a very, very busy person. I really appreciate the 30 minutes you were able to spend with us today. So I'll let you go, and we'll continue on here with our conversation, and look forward to everything that hopefully maybe this year it's not cold for me. I've got my fingers crossed. I feel like I've been a good boy this year, but we shall see. Well, Brian, I appreciate you having me here. I did get your handwritten request for that coloring book. And if you've maintained the same path that you've been on, I promise the coloring book will be coming instead of some coal. But also I expect that Forge and the whole University of Arizona in general helps to continue to support me on my business, because this is essential work that we're doing. We're making an impact around the world. Some would call what we're doing a social impact venture, but we can talk about that a whole nother session. But Brian, please, continue to support us as the University of Arizona. Don't break the law, and I promise you, instead of coal, you will get that coloring book. So thank you all for having me today. We so much appreciate it. And if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to call us. It's 520-555-5555, santaclaus.com, or my sclaus at santaclaus.com. So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your time. Thank you, Santa. Wow. I tell you, everybody, that was amazing. I have had a lot of chats on this fireside over the years, but never anybody like that. What an entrepreneur that Santa is. Well, I don't want don't go yet. We have a couple more things to cover, but Santa was talking a little bit about our ecosystem and all of the different people that are involved in it. And one of the entities that is really important to what we do, we work with a lot of students on campus. We work with a lot of entrepreneurs in the community, along with our partner, Startup Tucson. And then we have this fantastic incubator network called UACI that's there for a lot of the companies that need that support, and sometimes for a while. And so I'm hoping that we have a couple folks from UACI here who might be able to answer some other questions and talk a little bit about that. Eric?
Brian, it's so funny that you mentioned UACI and some folks, because actually I happened to be visiting Santa Claus's Tucson workshop, and he was right here in front of the camera. And I thought, oh my gosh, Brian just mentioned UACI. And so I might have just shoved Santa Claus aside to get in front of this video camera here. Also, coincidentally, me and Santa are wearing the same sweater today.
I know, you guys must shop in the same place.
We do, the Gap. I'm just kidding, but we make our own clothing here because many of you have seen your children, or you when you were a child, receive clothing.
Never a child, Eric.
That this might be true, but you have received clothing from Santa Claus. He just told me, so
usually underwear and socks.
This is true, but he also told me about this coloring book, and so I don't know. We'll see what he does this year. But needless to say, I am here. I just happen to be visiting with Santa, and so I'm right in front of this camera here. Hey, let's talk, Brian.
Well, what can you tell us about UACI, Eric, and particularly how does it support our entrepreneurial ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. Happy to chat about that. So we are one of many components that the University of Arizona has for entrepreneurs in our region. Specifically, UACI, we serve as the scalable science and technology serving startup incubator network for the university. So all the companies that we serve are scalable science and technology ventures. We're a part of the tech park. So for those of you, I think most everybody on this Zoom meeting is in Southern Arizona, but right there off of I-10 and Rita Road, we have a 1,300 acre, 2 million square foot tech park. We have a number of startups there. We have a biotech incubator up in Oro Valley. We have a climate sustainability incubator at the Biosphere 2. And we just built a second tech park at the Bridges. The first building just went up, the refinery. It's a 120,000 square foot building. The tech transfer operation of the University Tech Launch Arizona was our first tenant in that building. We'll be putting an incubator in there as well. And while we have incredible spaces, that's what we do as a tech park. Our job is to provide the programming to allow startups to obtain the resources that they need to succeed, or in some cases, fail fast and fail forward. For us, though, we don't do the work that we do without an incredible input. And that's where the community of Southern Arizona really matters to us. And so in some cases, the companies that we serve have come from Forge. They have obtained that entrepreneurial mindset, or at least the beginning of how to develop that within themselves through work with Forge. In some cases, our companies come from Tech Launch Arizona, which I referenced earlier. In some cases, our companies come from all over the place. And in some cases, we might serve a company and they might then go back to Forge for Forge Ahead and some of the work that they're doing with scaling companies. So we represent one piece of a broad ecosystem at the University of Arizona, led by Dr. Betsy Cantwell and the research enterprise at the university. And we're excited to be a part of it.
Awesome. Well, and you know, in that directionality, we've also seen some companies go from Forge over to UACI because I think they really like the structure and framework that you use. Can you talk a little bit about that? I want to say 27 point, but I don't know if that's been changed recently.
Yeah, absolutely. So the core programming that we work off of, and anybody on the call here is more than welcome to go to uaci.com if you want to get the visual of what I'm talking about. But we take our startups through a continuum of education and activities. It's 27, about to be, so good point, Brian, 28 major buckets of work that we conduct with our companies. This is everything from their entity formation to their operating agreements to how they build their teams, how they pitch for money, their financing and marketing, et cetera. We track three major things as it relates to that program. We track their exposure. So if they don't know it, we teach it to them. We track if they're implementing these things in their company, because when they get to groups like Forge and they get to groups like UACI, we're not just in theory. Oftentimes, we're very much so in practice. So we become an accountability partner for our companies. And then we track if things are well developed or finished, which very rarely are they finished because they're startups. But we certainly try to track that as well. The execution of this program is certainly all in the people. So I heard you talking with Santa Claus earlier about workforce and the people that he hires, and it's no different for an incubator like ours. So we have staff that really execute on this program, and we have mentors and residents. Each startup gets one of those to help them put it all together. And we have some core functional subject matter experts and a programmatic staff. And it's the combination of meetings with that staff that really help our startups grow. But we certainly don't do it alone. So that's a percentage of our work. Everything else is about the village that we've built here in Southern Arizona, the partners that we have in Forge, in groups like Startup Tucson, with the city, with the county, and others that really help to grow the companies that we have here, the innovations that we have throughout the state, actually.
That's fantastic. Can you talk really quickly about the Department of Energy and the role that you play there? Because I think that's pretty unique for not just Tucson, but for the entire region.
Yeah, absolutely. I often forget the statistic, but I think something like 350 days a year in Arizona, we get extreme sunshine. And for those of you that were here over the last week, we knocked off 2 of those not sunshiny days. But for the rest of it, our state has a really unique position to be able to foster the innovations coming out of the universities that we have and put it into a climate that suits itself well for clean energy. And so at UACI, we help to manage the American Made Challenges on behalf of the Department of Energy, amongst a few other programs. And our job there is to work with partners to recruit innovations from around the country that are building clean energy technologies to help battle numerous problems that are looking to manufacture them here in the United States. And so we recruit those innovators, we train those innovators, we put them through a program with the Department of Energy, and that program essentially is dealing out $3 million rounds of funding to a number of companies. And so it's a really nice additional way to get some non-dilutive capital into our region, or a funding that goes into companies that doesn't have to come with a percentage of the company. And we do pretty good with that. And so we have quite a few innovations, both in the incubator and that we're working with around the nation, again, in partnership with groups such as Forge, to really drive forward how we innovate and manufacture clean energy technologies, not just in Arizona, but across the US.
Wow, that is, it's just incredible, the amount of work and the ways in which you all connect. And one last thing, which I know I get asked a lot about, SBIR, STTR. Can you explain that and the role that you play in that?
Sure, and truly, it's about the role that that startups, small businesses, and the federal government play. But the SBIR, STTR program, Small Business Innovation Research, Small Business Technology Transfer, those programs are specifically meant to help to fund small businesses and startups that are working on innovations in a non-dilutive way. Apologies.
Oh, Santa's elf is still here, huh?
Yeah, well, I'm still in Shannon's workshop, and so the elf is all right. I might have to leave for just a second to help this elf, but I will answer your question first, and I will come back about 30 seconds later. So the SBIR STTR program, basically there's 11 participating agencies. It's all the major agencies that you hear of: the NIH, the NSF, the DoD, and others. And typically they're known for putting high dollar amounts of research funding into universities or institutions. And so the SBIR STTR program was developed so that those agencies also set aside funding for the small businesses and startups throughout the nation that are innovating. And so it's run in phases. On a phase one, you might get $250,000, sometimes less, sometimes far more, to help prove the feasibility of an innovation. On a phase two, you might get somewhere around $750,000 to $1 million to help to commercialize it. And on a phase three, whatever agency you're working with, they won't provide you with additional funding, but they'll actually help you to commercialize the technology. And those agencies will typically bucket themselves into two realms for startup companies: contracting agencies or granting agencies. Granting agencies such as the NIH or NSF, which are strong players in our ecosystem here due to the University of Arizona, they're granting agencies. And so they have big problems that they're trying to solve broadly, and broad buckets of interest. And for the innovations that we have here, they can apply to one of those broad buckets of interest with their innovation to try to solve some problems. On the flip side, contracting agencies such as the DoD, they have very specific needs. And so they're looking to fund SBIRs and STTRs with, help me build this new nose cone on this new jet. And they'll fund you to prove the feasibility on a phase one. They will help you to commercialize it on a phase two. And then in a phase three and beyond, they will actually become your first customers. So our job as a player in the state, and there are many that do this, is to help our companies to identify those opportunities, to provide them with the facilities and resources that they need to prove to any federal agency that they can actually work on that technology. And then to help them through the proposal process and the execution process. In fact, one of the members of our team, Sonia, is our subject matter expert for government contracting, very much specifically on SBIRs and STTRs. And we've realized some success. In 2021, our companies had about $8 million in SBIRs and STTRs, which was double what they did in 2020. And I'm very excited about going public with 3 recent phase 2 awards that occurred in the last 3 weeks, right to our state here, which represents what will probably end up being $3 million in non-dilutive federal funding directly to innovations right here in Tucson.
That's awesome. Yeah, the phase 2s. Wow, that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations to you and to all of them.
Oh, it's to the companies, and most of those companies have taken advantage of not just support from UACI, but they've done exactly what folks like you, Brian, and me tell every entrepreneur, which is go out there and seek every possible resource that you can. And if we're really good at doing our jobs, then what we've done is train those entrepreneurs to take in varying points of advice, to utilize all the resources available to them. We have a cadre of resources at the University of Arizona from students on through, so that they can do things like win SBIRs and STTR awards.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I know you have an elf to attend to, and I think I'm exhausted after talking with Santa. I mean, I got nothing left, man. So
try being in the room with him. He's over here with cue card.
I don't know how you're maintaining it.
Yeah, that's right.
How you staying cool? I'd be fanboying like crazy.
Well, I've known Santa for a while, and so it's initially was a fanboy situation, but we've now become partners. And in fact, we're helping Santa in his business. As you heard him earlier, he's going out for some capital, for some investment. Seems like he's seeking some investment from a local angel group here, and so we've had the opportunity to work with him for a bit. So my fanboy status has kind of waned over the years.
Well, I look forward to seeing Santa pitch at the Desert Angels screening panel in the near future. And I thank you very much, Eric, for all of your time today. And thank you to everybody. We're going to take you all out on another Christmas song. But meantime, everybody have a wonderful, safe, happy holiday. And we'll see you all in 2023.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Eric.